get into trouble. So, welcome to Tuesday's webinar, all about a beginner's guide, and I genuinely mean a beginner's guide. As always, we have got the chat line. The chat line is in place. So if you've got any questions, please ask. So, whoops-a-daisy. Oh, it's going a bit fast, isn't it? As always, we are recording today's soiree. You will send the slides to everybody, and say every week we always shout out. Some people would like to have bespoke marketing help, so that's available through the program for free, fully funded, should say, and so that's available. So just drop me a line if that is required. We know we have a tradition, don't we? We start with a little quiz. So have you got your pens at the ready? It's all about famous taglines. So here we go. Just for 5 minutes, just to get us warmed up. Does anybody know that tagline from a company? London, England. No, nobody does. Well, that's easy enough. Did you know? I didn't know this until I was researching it this morning. That tagline belongs to Burberry. There we go. Who now? Come on, man. You must know this one. Buy it, sell it, love it. Come on. Anybody?
eBay.
eBay it is. eBay it is. Yes. To my childhood. Oh, I hope you don't mind. I hope you don't mind. I don't want to be rude, but I hope you don't mind if I'm going to have to mute everybody, because I hope you don't mind, because we've got a few on today. So use the chat line. Please feel free to do so. Okay, so that is, yes, that's we've got that. Logs, isn't it? Rice Krispies, can't beat it. There we go. Anyone know this one? Now, this was a real disruptive marketing business. Yes. Anybody know who they are? Cowboy by the hair. Anybody know any takers for that one? Quite good, interesting business to look up. The Dollar Shave Club. Very dynamic and dramatic marketing. Ooh, think big. Think big. Any takers for think big? No. Well, let me help you out. IMAX. Oh, come on, you know this one. You know this one. I am loving it. It is none other than the Golden Arches. Double your pleasure, double your fun. Anyone want to chew on that one? It is none other than. Oh, two takers. Double. It is, Jackie's right. On the case. Wrigley's. Diamonds are forever, forever. Anyone know who that is? All those ladies on the webinar who've been given a diamond. Oh dear. We used to say De Beers. Used to say, wasn't it, an engagement ring should be a month's salary. Better have it your way. Yeah, who said that? I think it was my mother-in-law. And actually, who said what is? Who does that belong to? Burger King. The theme today got McDonald's and Burger King, and also on the Obey Your First. Any takers for that? The answer's there on the screen. It is Sprite. Don't be evil. Whose tagline was that? The magic words were "was that." Did you know that? Google. We're getting around to the act. We're getting around to the main event. Well done. Hey, Julie's on it today. Got the right. And last but not least, before we move on, don't be evil. Google is now do the right thing. So that leads us nicely along to the next 40 minutes as an absolute beginner's guide to Google Analytics. Now, here's a question you might be asking yourself. Why do you need Google Analytics? Well, that's not an unreasonable question to answer. Well, if you have an online presence, wouldn't it be great to know how you are doing and how you can improve? And so that's why we have Google Analytics. So now, who remembers those days? I don't know. Yes, I put this. Oh, think of your website as like a corner shop, not because it's open all hours, but think of it this way. Your website, you know, some I come across clients who may say, oh, my website looks nice, oh, it's this and it's that and the other. Well, ultimately, this is where I think of it very much as a corner shop. You may have the best shop in the world, but if nobody can find it, and when people come into it, they leave straight away, or you don't know what they're doing while you're there. Think of it very much that way. As you can see with the growth of online trading, e-commerce, that many of you are operating that way. So have that analogy in your head. If you owned a corner shop, wouldn't you like to know who's coming, why they're coming, where they came from, how old they are, etc.? Think of your website and this. Remember, marketing is not an art, it's a science. And that's what the theme of today will be. So why do you need Google Analytics? Well, it's in effect, it's a better understanding of how effective your website is, and you can learn some very valuable information. What's working and what's not. The three things then, it's an engine room for your marketing, also engine room for optimization and knowing about getting people to your site and how well your site performs. But let's be fair, we're going to start with this. There are a couple of issues we thought we'd address early in the piece. And I don't wish to cast aspersions on any sector of business, but there are web designers and there are web designers. And so it'd be fantastic if you have a web designer who's built you a wonderful site. But I would argue, maybe not controversially, that a website is not much help without knowing how it's performing. But having your web designer to give you a great site, but also the analytics and the interpretation of your analytics to know how well things are going. The second thing is the biggest enemy of small businesses: time. How long should I spend on my analytics? And these kind of questions. And what should I be doing with my time? Because, you know, there's so many things you can do in your marketing. As you know, when you just talk about all your activity on online, offline, social media, wherever it might be. So they're the two biggest challenges you face. And then there's a third one. You really want to spend your time sitting in front of a screen, analyzing data. And is it just geeky and all above me? And all those type of issues. Well, hopefully today you'll just get an insight. And that's what today is very much for absolute beginners, to quote David Bowie. So, just for the first few minutes, I'm going to take you through some of the absolute basics. Please forgive me if anyone is up to speed on analytics. I don't intend to patronize them, but it is a beginner's guide. So, Google Analytics. It is, as we all like, Yorkshire folk, free website analytics that helps you with analyze your site traffic. And it gives you a complete picture of your site performance. Right, absolute basics. So you'll be asking yourself this question, maybe, you know exactly more how many visitors your site gets. Where are they all coming from? Anyone who's under 30 won't get that, but never mind, not from Holland. How they navigate through your site, how long they spend on its page, and much more. So back to the analogy of the shop, how many people come into the shop, etc., where they're coming from, what they're doing. So you'll end up with something which we'll go into in more detail, something like this. It is graphological. And so you get images, so you don't just get a sea of data. Right, some things to know. Google Analytics will analyze three principles, three hits. So they'll take information from somebody arriving at your website and looking at a page. intuitively entitled page view. The second thing that Google will do will look at an activity relating to an event. Now, what an event is in Google speak is something other than a page view. It could be filling in a contact form, downloading a video, downloading a document. And then, ching. Also, if your business is set up in such a way, it's there to be called transaction e-commerce. We won't be covering that in any great detail today. That's for another day, but we'll give you a little bit of a flavor for that. So page views, events, and ka-ching. Now, what Google Analytics doesn't do is provide you with raw data. Oh, no, it doesn't. It provides you with reports. You'll get two types of data. One is user data, and the other is session data. Okay, two types. What might you say is user data? Well, it's fairly self-explanatory, although these are very particular words. The user data is having different, distinct visitors to the site. And what I call it GA. GA creates a user ID for each time a new visitor enters the site. And if the same visitor comes back, it recognizes. So you're leaving a little footprint. So your website, a visitor will arrive, and that will capture the user data. So what is session data? Well, you might have worked this out, that a session is a period the user spends on the site. Back to the shop, walk in and walk out within 45 seconds. It'll be recorded as such. So it begins with a page view when the person first arrives, and it continues until they leave the site. It actually I think it stops recording it after about 30 minutes of idleness. If, for example, somebody has opened up a website and they don't do anything, after 30 minutes, they might have nodded off, gone out, who knows what, it'll stop recording it. But a lot of time people choose to leave. Hope that's helped. User data, session data. And then, reports. Gosh, who can ever forget getting their school report? Oh my goodness. I tell you what, it's a bit between you and me. You used to come home, and if I'd go to school report, I'd walk into that house 10 foot tall. If I didn't, I used to slink into the bedroom. You know what my art teacher once wrote about me? Simon has difficulty drawing his own breath. I used to, there was the milk monitor at school, and those are the days. Anyway, let's remember that day. Don't call it maths, arithmetic. You'll get reports. So when we log on to Google Analytics in a couple of moments, we'll just be seeing reports relating to interpretation of the data. Now, the final thing we need to know before we actually enter the brave new world of Google Analytics are two things: dimensions and metrics. So, what is a dimension, you might ask? It is basically an attribute of the data. So in this example here, it will be a country that is a dimension. So the visitor may come from a particular place. And the metrics, in effect, big word this one, I'll always struggle this one, quantitative. God, I've been practicing it all morning. Quantitative measurements. So it is the number of something. And that session, how many sessions took place over a period of time. So it's the dimension is a fact, as it were, and a metric is a number. Okay, and we've got that with user data, sessions data. Right. So, a big question: how do you install Google Analytics? I'm going to whiz over now the chat line. Has anybody got any questions at this point? Gives me an opportunity to have a little libation. If not, I will carry on, to quote Kenneth Williams. How to install Google Analytics. I can read. You need to do two things. You need to sign up. So just type in Google Analytics and create an account. You then need to install Google Analytics on the site. So here it is in 3 steps. Sign up for Google Analytics. You then have to magically add a tracking code, which I'm going to cover in a moment. And then your world is your oyster. So the sign up in effect is in 3 simple stages. You need, the basic stuff, create an account. Very simple. That's what you have to do. There's no other way. And then you'll be just asking what you want to measure. So you can measure your website. Obviously, if you have an app that's based in the world of Android, you can also look at those. And then you will type in the website name, and you are off and running, but only halfway there, because you need a tracking code. Now, what is a tracking code? Well, a tracking code is something that you'll put on the site, much in the same as a little gizmo, and it will go in place. Now, if you have not got this Google Analytics set up before today, and you set it up, say, tomorrow, your data will only exist from the 31st of March. You cannot go back. So you go into the admin section, you click on tracking code, and as if by magic, you get something called a tracking ID. Let me just go one more time. You'll see in a moment when we're actually on Google Analytics admin, tracking information, tracking code, and you get an ID. That, because our time is so short today, I won't go into great detail what you need to do next, but in effect, you need to get that tracking in your website. How to do that? Well, choose Word. We've got 2 options. You go back to your web designer friend, you go onto YouTube, that will help you out, or have a go yourself. Now, in a WordPress website, which many people are using, you can also use a plugin. As you can see, Monster Insights, etc. But there is a Google Analytics plugin you can just install by searching for them and put it in. So you can have a version of your analytics on your website that way. But really, you need your code adding to every page on your website. Some of you might be thinking, I've got 20 pages on my website. Do I need 20 codes? No, because you need to add the code to the head of a footer. And this illustration here is of a WordPress website. You get the slides through, and I'll send you a link on how to do this. But basically, it goes into the header of the site. So it's there covering everything you need to know. So that will start the wheels in motion. Google account, tracking code, we're off and running. So, shall we? Shall we now have a go? For the next half an hour, I'm going to give you a little whistle-stop tour to some of the data and the ways in which you can use your analytics. Shall we? We shall. So I have to stop sharing at this moment. Now, please tell me, and I hope quite simply, quite quickly, I hope I haven't lost anybody. So I'm now going to find here. Let's hope this works. Shucks. Press the wrong button. Oops. Oh dear. Oh, shibbity-bibs. trying to get to my, I'll tell you what I can do. I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll stop sharing. Just bear with me a ticket. Just bear with me a, okay. Whoops, just bear with me a second. Call that, I'm going to call that a Freudian slip. Let's hope it's got Google Analytics uploading in the background. It's taking its time. I'm going to share my screen again. All right, let's try again. Let's try again. I hope. I'm going to check. Has that come up on the screen? I hope so. Please shout if it doesn't. It's loading. Right. Now, that is the home page for Google Analytics. Okay. There are different accounts that can be set up. So please, if anyone's got any questions, just drop a line. So here, I'm going to click on this little button here just to show you. And you can see I have got 5 different accounts. So I'm just going to take you through, please not intend to be anything other than just illustrations. I've got about 5 different accounts. I'm looking at 5 different websites. You have an account, and within that account, I've got a couple of websites. So I've got the account, I've got my tracking code there. Can you see that, the UA code? So it's the account, the property where it all happens, and then views. I'll now click on views, and that is what it brings up. The front page. Okay? Right. On the left-hand columns here are the 5 key reports. I'll come back to in a moment to take you through those. But then it gives you what in effect is real-time information. Right. So this is what's happening right now. So in the last, you've got users. So in effect, that is people who have come to the site. 12 users have had, remember, 12 sessions. Okay? That's what's happened. Now here comes the magic thing called bounce rate. I'm going to go to the chat line. Does anybody know what the bounce rate is? Not, I'll wait for one moment to come up on the screen. Wait a moment, if not, I have a difficulty seeing the chat line at the moment. Right. The bounce rate is a percentage of your users. So if your bounce rate was 100%, that means every person who has arrived on your website has in effect only done one thing. Okay, so come on, looked at something and left. So it's estimated then, you would think, by definition, you would ideally like a bounce rate somewhere between 25 and 40%. So you're engaging with people. Often a higher bounce rate is not always a bad thing, because your users may arrive on the site, they read an article and leave. It's not always a bad thing. An average is somewhere between 40 and 55. So for this time period here, you've got a high bounce rate. And for this particular website, for the last 7 days, the average session has only been 32 seconds. A short time period. But what we'll do is this. On the right-hand side, it shows me exactly at 2:26 how many people are on the website right now, which is a bit of a disappointment because I rang up my mother, 85. I said, Mother, I said, tomorrow, it was yesterday, I said, tomorrow at about 2:25, can you please, onto the computer, go onto my website and spend some time there. She said Simon, she calls me Simon. She said, Simon, consider it done. And he said to me, by the way, what's a computer? It's all on that one. Anyway, so there we are. So no active users right now. Right, never mind. We'll soldier on. And so here, underneath that, it's only a short time period. So you can see where I'm clicking. Let's not quote the Beatles. That's not yesterday. Let's say take the last 28 days. And what happens? Look at that. A totally different reading. 85 users, 85 sessions, a variance in bounce rate, but a longer session. And something happened here. So on the 16th of February, big activity, no less. You get an idea, very high level of the users. Well, let's scroll down. This is that report. Now, this is called acquisition. How do you get the customers arriving on this site? Now, what I'm going to do, I'll do the same thing again. I'm going to come off the last 7 days. I'm going to go for a much bigger time period. Use the option of today or the last 90 days. There we are. So it looks exactly on what's happening, and it's different shades. Now I'm going to hold this over the screen, so hopefully you can see it. You have got 5 categories. Direct, I'll start at Eric Morley. Direct, right at the bottom, reverse order. What is direct? That is a business that is typing in your domain name. So they know what they're looking for. An organic search is where they've typed in a keyword. So if you're, whatever it might be, and then they've come to you. The third category there is referral. So that may have been a referral from the likes of a directory like Yell or whatever it might be. You've then got social, which, believe it or not, is social media. We'll delve a little bit deeper. We can see how things are coming. This is one of my websites, and you can see that the majority of searches to this site are coming just from typing in your domain name or clicking a link that may have come with a domain name direct in it, which may be for something like your email signature. Okay, so that's that. We'll come over to acquisition in a minute. Underneath that, it says, how are your active users happening? What's happening with them? And here is a really good graph. It basically is seeing, you can follow that. It takes it incrementally in that last 30 days in periods. So you've got 90 active users. And at the start here, back in March, we had 144. It's trending slightly down. So there's been less activity over that time period. So you could argue that people haven't necessarily engaged as much. So that's the active users. Over to the right is how well you retain users. There are clients here, 100%, which is 100% have come onto the site and been there, but they haven't come back over the last few weeks. That's why it's blank right now, because I've had 12 users in the last few days, but you'll be able to check. So a lot of, in this interpretation of events, people are coming onto the site, getting their information, not coming back over this small window. Right. Next on the list, what time of day do people come onto the site? It's fascinating information, very helpful, particularly if you're trading online. So the classic thing I can always think about is that you may be putting promotion, for example, if you're a business gearing up for Easter, you might be doing promotions on Wednesday or Thursday leading up to Easter. So if you're very much a real-time kind of business, You may look at the times of day that people are visiting your site. So you might be wanting to put promotions and things in particular moments in time. It works very well for e-commerce. Next on the list, where are your users? Oh my goodness, look at that. You can see the majority are in the United Kingdom, but that's not true because it's down to the domain name where the domain is registered. So what we'll do, we're going to delve a little deeper. We'll click on location overview. Oh my goodness. And what's going to happen here? And he says, playing, you can see where it's come from. So look at the United Kingdom. So of the 12 users, 7 have come from the UK. Now, where have they come from? Well, let's have a little look. Let's click here. Can you see that? On city. Let's play. Where do you think they're coming from? We'll soon find out. I don't know. I've got somebody in every port, if only. Oh, I've got somebody in a port. Hey, there you go. 2 from the metropolis of Kingston upon Hull. 2 from Dublin, 2 Oxford, Sheffield, Sutton in Ashfield near Mansfield, York, Penarth, and of course I actually have a client in Ukraine, so I'm explaining the Kiev, and I'm going to have to fire the bat and get an idea. Oh, and by the way, this is all about acquisition, and then we're going to cover behavior and conversion. So I can see that what my users have done in terms of bounce rate from each individual town. So you may have done a specific promotion relating to a town. And as you can see, and you look on the left, it's opened up the audience report, which we're going to return to in one moment. But just very basic information. So think of it as peeling back the onion, as it were, in that you've asked a question, where are the people coming from? You've looked at it and you've narrowed it down. So you can imagine if you had lots of visitors coming from France and looking at pages, you may be a case for making landing pages and the likes, or yes, in French. That's users. Devices is an interesting one. So this website bucks the trend because a lot of users are coming from desktops and not necessarily and from mobiles. So you may make the case, if you know the difference as well, so you can click on that information and you'll see if your website performs well with a mobile website or with a desktop version. And I'll come on to audience in a moment. And then finally, on the open page, look at this. What pages did your users visit? You can see of those numbers where they went to, and you're going to say, you haven't got a page called / or / or whatever it is. You're right, I don't. It's the home page. Then the about us, the contact us, the training course. So you got a very high level view on the last 7 days, which pages looked at, where the users are coming from. Now, 2 things to suggest on this is that you want to consider as an absolute basic guide is to look at the taking out your own URL. So in that situation, in terms of recording data, if you go into the admin section here, you can actually remove your own URL. If you're looking at your own website, so it won't show up in the statistics. And you can take out other people's URL. Okay, right. Let's focus now on the different reports. So I'm going to click on audience. We've already looked at the overview, and you can see all the different things down here. I'm going to click here on the middle one, audiences, for this particular website. And look, you can get 3 reports. The first one there is age. So for this site, I have got 54% male users. They are under, majority are under, half are under 34 male, and their interests are sports, computers, etc. Very interesting information particularly for a product-based business. Your gender, age, and interests. So if you're creating content, you might want to gear some of the content around men aged under 35 with particular levels of interest. And clicking further down, you can segment much more. I talked about the demographics, the overview, and the age. And again, it works back to this scenario of peeling onions. So you can click on information here, and you can see what people have done in their behavior for the different users. So you've got great information relating to interests, geography, demographics, all within that. So your audience. Under the overview, it's a slightly more detailed view. And this is giving you information on what the audience have done. So I clicked on the overview button for the audience. I know a little bit about who the people are over the last week. And here again, I'm going to do something different here. You see in the top right, let's choose a much bigger date. So it's come from the 4th of January to right now. Oh, what happens? You've got how the users have behaved. So you've got the total number of users, the number of sessions, the page views, the bounce rate, and the time. And you've got other information which will help in that you can see the majority of people visiting this site are arriving, looking at one thing, getting information for a minute, and leaving. So you've got a little bit of interpretation there, and you can see that 90% are new. There's only a small number are returners, which for some businesses isn't great. If you imagine you were selling candles or something and you've got people coming on your website, not leaving after a minute, I would suggest you've got slight issues. It doesn't matter so much for a business that's a slightly different configuration. And then you've got the languages used, English. You can see the visitors coming from far wider. Some really fantastic information. And you can see that, I think I alluded to it earlier, quite a lot happened on the 16th of February. So this is a great way of just giving a view. If you're creating a blog or something that's happened, you can get an insight into the peaks and troughs. That is audience. So really good information there in terms of the people and what happens. The next section, we'll cover this time just to cover acquisition and behavior. Ooh. Acquisition. Remember this, the overview, and this will be fantastic for many of you who are using different tools. Remember we spoke earlier about direct traffic, organic searches, referrals, and social. Wouldn't you like to know which social media platforms are arriving from? Wouldn't you like to know that? Well, let's do it, shall we? You've got the direct, you've got organic, you've got referral, and you've got social. Let's find out. Wonder what my money's on here. Let me have a little think. You'll probably be able to glean a lot. When you're setting up links on your Facebook, your LinkedIn, your Twitter, whatever it might be, you'll soon see to drive traffic to your website. I'm doing this because it's thinking about it. Padding, I think it's called. And it might not be working. Oh, no. So you get an idea. Oh, it's not working. It's having a loading up. Just bear with me a tick. Oh dear. A little slow. I do apologize. It's fighting its way. Oh, it's not going to work. Well, could be abandonment moment. Could be. I'm going to go back to overview because it's not, forgive me, it's not looking at, but you've got referrals, which often can be the likes of a site, of a site like whatever, Yale or whoever it might be. Now, what hasn't been set up on this site, which I want to draw your attention to on the right-hand side, is a goal. So think of it very much in footballing analogy. You might want to, you may be running a campaign, you've got a specific aim, you want to see if that's worked. This website here is just here for, it's an information-only website. Not expecting sales, not expecting leads, but for a business that is actually wanting to transact, you can see the goals that you can set, and it's a great way of running things from a conversion perspective. You add those up, and you can see if it works. If goals work really well if you're running Google Ads or anything of that nature, you can actually see if you've got money in the kitty. The final bit I want to, because conversions is a function of goals. So behavior, spelt correctly. Sometimes Google does it that way. So behavior, you've got your overview. So again, this is taking a small, I've taken the same window of January the 4th, and you can see all the page views. You'll soon see which pages people are visiting. So half are going to the home page, etc. You get an idea there. So it's great for behavior. You can click on any of these titles and go underneath it to see what's happened. But what I would encourage is this, for this particular example, is to go click on here, behavior flow. What happens? Let's hope it loads this time, otherwise I'm going to get angry. And there. For this time period, hope that's come up on the screen. You can see that okay. Remember that number, 255 people landed on the page, and you can see what happened next. You can see how many, I'll put that up on the screen, hope that's come up. You can see the through traffic and the drop-offs. So a quarter of people for this time period have come onto the home page and clicked on to do something else. But as we saw earlier, 3/4 of them have disappeared. And where have they gone? Well, they've gone to all these different pages, and then they've gone on again. So you'll soon see how people are behaving in terms of their behavior on the site. Now you can go and look deeper. You can find out, for example, those people who've come to your website via Facebook have gone on to what page? And what have they done after that? Oh, and you know, where are they from? How old are they? What they did next? How long they stayed on it? Have they come back? So you can see you get some fantastic high-level information. So you might argue that we need to do more activity in this example to get people to go from the landing page onto something else. So behavior flow. And I'll just show this one final bit here, subconscious about information overload. Under behavior is events. Remember mentioning events earlier. And you can see just this time period, on the 2nd of March, people were clicking on events. So it may well be a link to something else, a booking form, something of that ilk. So, your event ties in with your page views. The final piece of the puzzle, I'm going to go on to the admin section right at the bottom here. Click on admin. Let me show you something. It brings up the 3 areas we spoke about earlier, which is the master account, the property, and then the website. I'm going to click on to view settings. And it tells you there, if it loads, what it's picking up, the website, but also we've set it in such a way. It's got this button down here. Can you see that, hopefully? Called Site Search Settings. That's a bit of a alliteration, is it? Or Site Search Settings. What is that? Well, you want to know what happens when somebody comes on your website and how they behaved. But this here is also tracking when people are searching within the site. So Bob has come on the site, on the landing page, he goes to the setting, he goes to the search. What are they searching for? What are they doing? So again, fantastic piece of information there. You need to turn that on. It'll tip there. And we come back to the admin page here, which hopefully, let's go back. Let's come back, but come back here. And where were we? Now, we've gone into those view settings. You've seen here on the middle bit is where you can get your tracking information. Now, the final piece of the puzzle to show you is filters. Click on filters. Why am I clicking on filters, Simon? Well, we can click on the add filter. And what we want to do is call it something. So I'm gonna call it domain. Yeah. Click on predefined, leave it like that, and then click on filter type, exclude. Source destination, traffic from IP addresses. And then you type in your own IP address. So you're not picking up, and my mother as well, you're not picking up a specific IP address, which will inflate potentially the things. So use the filters. Now, what are you asking? Today's tip, how do I find my IP address? Well, as I've done it earlier, type in Google, what is my IP? And if by magic, your IP address is there. So what do you do then? You cut and paste it, or copy and paste it into there. And as if by magic, you can exclude your own IP address. So think about users to get your tracking code, exclude your address, and just little tips there to pick up a site search. And that, in 3/4 of an hour, is a beginner's guide to Google Analytics. Go back to the home page. To think of it just as a quick overview. Think very much of using the data. What are you searching for? And if you only want 1 or 2 things, you can just set up under here, under customization, a couple of reports and just have those. You can play with it to your heart's content, but wouldn't it be useful to know how many people are arriving, what they're doing, where they're coming from, where they're leaving, where they're exiting? You've got a lot more information that will help you with your website. Whew. always promise myself, if you go on for a little 3/4 an hour, people will soon forget. So you will get this through your copy of this is for you, and I will sit here and take any questions. Samantha has asked, how easy is it to put on each page of the website yourself? I think, Samantha, the question was, if I'm interpreting your question correctly, if you get the tracking code and it goes into the header of the website, it'll cover all the different pages. You don't need a code on each page. So I hope that's answered your question. I hope so. I'm talking the yes, the tracking code. That's great. So yeah, you need the tracking code. So my advice is, if you can do it yourself, great. Learn a little bit of Google Analytics. Spend 20 minutes a week looking at them. You'll gain quite a lot, because you probably spent quite a bit of money on your website and you want it to work. It might be my as a summary. Any other questions? Well, if not, I hope that's given you an insight. And some of you may well have been using analytics as we speak. So just to quickly summarize, log into Google, get the code, add the code into the site, use the site to choose some reports and see what's doing. That is as best as I can help you in this very beginner's guide. If you would like to go into far more detail, then I'm happy to do that on a one-to-one basis, look at your sites and things like that. It'd be really helpful. You spend a lot of money on your site, you want to make sure it's working. So, thank you very much for listening. I will sign off now, and I'll say, for those of you, we're going to be back next week, as always, every Tuesday. We don't go anywhere on a Tuesday. So hopefully we'll see you next time. Thank you very much.